Hey, fellow travelers. Ready for a deep dive into something we all need, whether we're exploring a new city or just trying to find our way in life?
Asking for directions.
Exactly. Even in our age of GPS and map apps, there's still something so helpful and human about getting directions from a real person.
It's true. And for this deep dive, you've sent us a podcast script all about asking for directions in English.
Perfect timing. We'll break down the essential phrases and vocabulary so you can navigate any new place with confidence.
But let's not just stop at the surface level.
Right. Let's go deeper.
We've all seen those basic phrases like, excuse me, where is, or how do I get to?
Exactly. I'm curious to explore the psychology behind why those phrases work so well.
You know, it's fascinating. When we're in a new place, our brains are on high alert, trying to process all this unfamiliar information.
Makes sense.
So starting with, excuse me, it's not just about being polite.
There's more to it.
It signals that you're about to ask for help.
Ah, I see.
And that puts the other person in a helpful mindset right away.
It's like you're saying, hey, I'm a little out of my element here. Can you lend a hand?
Exactly. And then following up with a clear and concise question.
Right. Get to the point.
It tells them exactly what you need. No ambiguity, no beating around the bush.
Okay, that makes sense. And I noticed in the script that there's an emphasis on using landmarks.
Ah, yes.
It's next to the bookstore, across from the bank, that sort of thing.
That's key. Landmarks tap into our spatial memory instead of abstract directions like north or south.
Right.
You're giving the person a visual anchor, something they can actually picture in their minds.
It's like creating a mental map together.
Precisely. That shared visual reference point makes those directions so much easier to follow, especially in a busy or unfamiliar environment.
This is making me think of a time I was completely lost in this maze of winding streets in Morocco, and I finally asked this local for directions to the main square.
Oh, I bet that was an adventure.
And he just pointed to this distant minaret and said, walk towards the tower, you can't miss it.
And I'm assuming you found it.
I did. That tower became like my guiding star. I just kept my eyes on it and I found my way.
That's the beauty of landmarks. They give you a sense of direction and reassurance, even when you're feeling overwhelmed or uncertain.
So we've got the polite opening, a clear question using landmarks. What else makes for effective directions?
Well, the script emphasizes specifying distances and times.
Oh, right, like 2 blocks away or it's a 5-minute walk.
Exactly. That gives the person a clearer sense of how far they need to go, and it helps manage expectations.
So if someone tells you it's a 5-minute walk,
You're less likely to panic if you haven't arrived after a couple minutes.
that's true. I also noticed in the role play section of the script, the tourist kept confirming the directions. Like,
Whoa.
turn left at the traffic lights near the bookstore. Got it.
That's important. It shows you're actively listening and ensures both people are on the same page.
Right, right.
It also helps the person asking for directions to internalize the route.
Ah, I see. So they're more likely to remember it.
Precisely. That repetition helps solidify the information and makes them feel more confident about following the directions.
Now, the script has a whole section on practicing giving directions with different scenarios, like finding a museum,
Yes.
a restaurant, a hotel, that kind of thing.
That's a great way to apply what we've learned. By engaging with the material and visualizing those routes,
Yeah.
you're training your brain to recall this information when you need it most.
I'm game. Let's put on those traveler shoes and try it out.
Right.
First up, go straight ahead for 3 blocks, then turn right at the park. The museum is on your left, next to the library.
Okay, so I'm picturing myself walking those 3 blocks, maybe passing some shops and cafes along the way.
Right.
Then the open space at the park, turning right, and there's the museum, this grand old building with the library right beside it.
I love how those landmarks make it so vivid.
Exactly. And notice how the instructions use specific details like on your left, next to...
Yay.
Those are crucial to avoid confusion and make sure you're going in the right direction.
All right, next scenario. Walk straight until you see the post office, then turn left. The restaurant is on your right, across from the bank.
Okay, starting with a clear landmark, the post office, then a left turn, the restaurant's positioned opposite the bank.
I can almost smell the food already.
It's funny how our senses get involved when we really start picturing these places.
And that's the point, right? Creating those vivid mental images that we can access later.
Absolutely. The more we engage our senses and emotions, the more those directions will stick with us.
All right, last one. Take the first right after the traffic lights, then go straight for about 5 minutes. The hotel is on your left, between the pharmacy and the supermarket.
Hmm. This one relies on time rather than a specific landmark for that final stretch.
True, but we still have the traffic lights as a starting point,
Good point.
and then the pharmacy and supermarket as a visual frame for spotting the hotel.
It's like a little puzzle, putting the clues together to find our destination.
Now, what about those times when we still get lost or the directions don't seem to make sense?
That's where those nonverbal communication skills come in.
Ah, I see where you're going with this. A great segue to the next part of our deep dive. But before we get ahead of ourselves,
Yes.
I think we've covered a lot already.
We have. We've gone beyond simply listing phrases, really explored the WHY behind effective communication when asking for directions.
Exactly. So for our listeners out there,
Yes.
if you've ever felt intimidated by the thought of asking for directions in another language,
Don't worry.
remember, it's more than just memorizing words.
It's about connecting with another person, sharing a moment of understanding, and using those communication tools to navigate not just physical spaces,
Right.
but also cultural landscapes.
And sometimes those unexpected detours and miscommunications lead to the most memorable travel stories. But we'll save those for the next part of our deep dive.
Definitely. Ready to jump into the world of nonverbal communication.
I am. I've had so many experiences where a smile or a gesture or even just like a questioning look has helped me navigate a tricky situation, especially when I don't speak the language.
It really is like a whole other language system that we have just built into our bodies and expressions.
Totally. The script touches on this, but I feel like we can really go deeper here.
Absolutely. Think about this. You're in a new city. You need to find the bus station, a shopping mall, and a hospital. Even if you don't know the language, you have tools at your disposal.
Okay, let's break this down.
Okay.
So, say I'm trying to find the bus station. How can I use nonverbal cues to get my message across?
Well, first off, a map is your best friend. Even if you don't speak the language, you can point to the bus icon on a map.
Right.
It'll communicate your intent instantly.
It's a universal symbol.
Precisely. And you can supplement that by mimicking the action of driving a bus, maybe even making a vroom vroom sound.
I can see myself doing that, maybe a little sheepishly at first, but hopefully with a shared laugh with whoever I'm asking.
That's the spirit.
Yeah.
Those moments of shared humor can really break down barriers and create a connection, even if you don't speak the same language.
Now, what about finding the shopping mall? I feel like that's maybe trickier to mime.
True, but you could try, miming pushing a shopping cart or holding a shopping bag, or if you see someone with a shopping bag, point to it, and then gesture questioningly in the direction you think the mall might be.
It's like charades with slightly higher stakes.
Exactly. And remember, your facial expressions play a huge role too, Maintaining eye contact, offering a friendly smile, and projecting an air of confidence can make a huge difference
Right.
in how receptive people are to helping you.
It's like you're saying, hey, I'm a little lost, but I'm not freaking out. I'm open to your help.
Exactly. And that can put people at ease and make them more willing to go the extra mile.
Okay, now for the hospital. This one feels a little bit more serious. How can I use nonverbal cues effectively in a situation where I might actually be feeling a little stressed or anxious?
Well, the universal symbol for a hospital is usually a red cross or a red crescent. So if you can find that symbol on a map or a sign, you can point to it and then to yourself to indicate that you need to go there.
And if I'm feeling really lost or overwhelmed, is it okay to just approach someone and say, help, even if I don't know any other words in their language?
Absolutely. Sometimes the most direct approach is the best. And remember, your tone of voice and facial expressions will convey the urgency of the situation.
Okay.
People are generally wired to help others in need, especially if you're clearly distressed.
That's reassuring to hear because I think it's easy to get caught up in the fear of not speaking the language perfectly. But sometimes it's those raw human moments of vulnerability that can lead to the most genuine connections.
I couldn't agree more. Think about those times that you've witnessed someone struggling to communicate in a foreign language.
Right.
You automatically feel that surge of empathy and a desire to help.
Oh, absolutely. Our human instincts kick in and we want to bridge that communication gap even if we don't share a common language.
And those moments of cross-cultural connection can be incredibly rewarding for both the person seeking help and the person offering it.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we're all human, and we all share the same basic needs and desires, regardless of language or cultural background.
This is making me think of a time I was traveling in rural Japan. and I got completely turned around trying to find this hiking trail. And I ended up, gesturing wildly at this local farmer, pointing at my map, and then at the mountains in the
Yeah.
distance. He must have understood my desperation because he kind of chuckled and beckoned me to follow him and personally led me to the trailhead, even though it was quite a detour for him.
That's a perfect example of how nonverbal communication, combined with a bit of kindness and patience, can really overcome even the most challenging language barriers.
It's also a reminder that sometimes the best way to connect with someone is to just be present, attentive, and willing to help.
So listener, next time you find yourself struggling to communicate in another language, don't underestimate the power of those nonverbal cues.
Tap into your inner mime, embrace those gestures, and let your facial expressions do the talking.
Exactly.
You might be surprised at how much you can convey without uttering a single word.
And who knows, you might even stumble upon a hidden gem or forge a heartwarming connection along the way.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It has.
It's amazing how much depth and nuance there is to something that seems as simple as asking for directions.
It's a microcosm of communication itself, really.
Yeah.
Understanding your audience, using the right tools, being adaptable when things don't go according to plan.
And it's a skill that goes so far beyond travel. Think about all the situations in life where clear communication is essential, giving presentations, negotiating deals, building relationships.
Absolutely. These principles apply whether you're trying to find your way in a foreign city or navigate the complexities of interpersonal relationships.
So for our listeners out there, remember, effective communication is about so much more than just words.
It's true.
It's about being present, being observant, and being willing to connect on a human level.
And sometimes the most meaningful connections happen when we step outside our comfort zones and embrace the beauty of nonverbal communication.
Beautifully said. Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive completely, I want to touch on one more aspect of the script.
Okay.
Something that really resonated with me. The interactive challenge.
Intrigued, what aspect?
Well, the script challenges listeners to imagine being in a new city and needing to find certain locations, and encourages them to practice asking for directions out loud, even if they're just talking to themselves.
I love that because it's one thing to passively absorb information, but it's another to actually practice.
Yeah. And by practicing out loud, you're not just training your brain.
Right.
You're also building your confidence and getting comfortable with the sounds and rhythms of the language.
It's a rehearsal for real-life interactions.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
The point is to just get those phrases flowing and to feel the empowerment that comes from expressing yourself in another language.
It's like you're saying, hey, I might not be fluent, but I'm willing to try and I'm not afraid to make mistakes.
Exactly. And that willingness to try, to put yourself out there, is what opens up those doors to new experiences and connections.
So listener out there, embrace that challenge. Find a quiet spot. Channel your inner explorer and practice asking for directions to those imaginary locations.
You might stumble over a few words. You might feel a bit silly at first.
It's okay.
But trust me, the more you practice, the more confident and fluent you'll become.
And who knows, maybe one day you'll find yourself in that very city, confidently navigating the streets and using those practiced phrases.
No, that's a thought that inspires me to keep learning and exploring. This deep dive has been such a rich and multifaceted exploration of communication.
We really have gone beyond the surface level of phrases
Yeah.
and delved into the heart of what it means to connect with others.
And we've discovered that sometimes the most powerful communication doesn't happen through words at all, but through those universal expressions of kindness, curiosity, and just a willingness to help. So to our listener, remember this. The world is full of fascinating people and incredible experiences just waiting to be discovered.
It's true.
And with a little bit of confidence, a dash of creativity, and a whole lot of heart, you can navigate any language barrier and just unlock a world of possibilities. It struck me that asking for directions is almost a metaphor for life itself.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, think about it. We're all on this journey trying to find our way.
Right.
And sometimes we need to ask for help, rely on landmarks, adjust our course when we get lost.
I see what you mean. And just like with directions, there's no one right path.
Exactly. And that closing question in the script, what are some other situations where clear communication is crucial? It really got me thinking about how these skills we've been discussing apply to so many different areas of life.
It's true. Whether you're ordering food in a foreign country or explaining a medical issue or even just trying to connect with someone from a different culture, those core principles of communication are so important.
Being respectful, being concise, using visuals whenever possible, confirming you understand.
And being adaptable, because just like when you're navigating a new city, there will always be unexpected obstacles and communication breakdowns.
But that's all part of the adventure, right? Those moments where we have to think outside the box, use our creativity, and rely on our nonverbal skills to bridge the gap.
Absolutely. And those moments often lead to the most hilarious travel stories or the most heartwarming connections.
Speaking of heartwarming connections, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about the power of a smile.
Ah, yes, the universal language of kindness.
Exactly. It's amazing how such a simple gesture can disarm someone, put them at ease, and create an instant connection, even if you don't speak the same language.
It's like a signal that says, I come in peace. I'm open to connecting with you.
And it's contagious. You smile at someone and they almost can't help but smile back. Instant mood booster.
It's true. There's even scientific evidence that smiling releases endorphins, those feel-good chemicals.
So not only is it a powerful communication tool, but it's also good for us. Win-win.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So listener, next time you're in a situation where you're feeling lost or confused or unsure how to communicate, remember this. Start with a smile.
It might seem small, but it can make a huge difference in how people perceive you and how open they are to helping.
And remember, even if you stumble over a few words or get lost in translation, as long as you approach the situation with a positive attitude and a willingness to connect, you'll be amazed at what you can accomplish.
Beautifully said. I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have. We've explored the nuances of asking for directions, uncovered the power of nonverbal communication, and even extrapolated those principles to broader life situations.
And I hope our listeners feeling empowered and inspired to put these skills into practice, whether they're planning a trip abroad or simply navigating the everyday complexities of human interaction.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this episode, let's leave our listener with a final thought. The world is full of amazing people and incredible experiences just waiting to be discovered.
It's true.
And the key to unlocking those experiences is the courage to connect, to communicate, and to embrace the adventure, even when it takes you off the beaten path.
Beautifully put.
Until next time, happy travels and happy communicating.